You ever stop to wonder just what's the point in all of this? Like, why we spend so much time of our lives watching anime in the first place? I mean, I've spent the first half of the best years of my life in school watching all kinds of junk, and it's hard not to wonder what's the end goal here. When all is said and done, what legacy will I leave behind, and is my time maybe best spent focusing on more productive ventures? Okay, that's maybe a little too existential for the intro to an anime video. Realistically, you don't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, and you don't find the gems that make this hobby well worth it without digging through some slop. I can't say it makes the slop any more meaningful, but I figure I might as well document my journey in video format so we can all laugh at my suffering together. This episode, we're back to the usual formats. After giving the random anime generator a little break, I'm firing it up once more to spit out 3 series for me to give the good old college try and see if they're worth investing more of my limited time into. It's a classic case of 3 episodes to catch my interest or join a growing list of has-beens on the dropped list. Many have tried, few succeed. The path to glory is paved in broken dreams. I've been doing this for almost 2 years now, and I guess I should finally take the opportunity to talk about randomness. Human beings are actually really bad at perceiving true randomness. Steve Jobs famously once remarked about having to make Apple's shuffle algorithm less random to make it feel more random, as people were complaining that true randomness was leading to the same song or artist being played too many times back to back. As much as I like to pride this series in being truly random with what it spits out, even that isn't infallible, since I'm obviously biasing the pool by excluding things that I've already watched. The benefit of this is that it more closely approximates my intention of this series to drum up as many weird and relatively obscure titles I can for y'all's viewing pleasure, but occasionally, and especially close to the end of seasons, it can certainly miss stuff. Sometimes you get yourself a fairly popular show from recent memory and have to stick with it because your commitment to the bit. I leave it to y'all to decide if that's good or bad. Fresh off the seasonal chart, I May Be a Guild Receptionist, but I'll solo any boss to clock out on time, is a fantasy workplace comedy that aired in winter 2025. The story centers on Alina Clover, a meager guild receptionist, happily content to live a simpler life and reap all the benefits and stability that comes with the job. The one catch is that all the paperwork associated with the position can pile up quickly, and the inconsistencies of an adventurous lifestyle end up trickling down onto her in the form of overtime. Alina hates overtime with a burning passion, and after missing a local festival because of it, she vows that she'll do anything she needs to clock out on time, including taking out any pesky boss monsters that might be causing trouble in the dungeon. The only challenge is that the guild forbids receptionists from taking up any side gigs, so Alina must keep her identity as the famed executioner secret, which is not going well. There is something about light novel fantasy that always seems to copy a lot of ideas from one another. Even though Guild Receptionist isn't part of that dreaded genre that should not be named, I can certainly feel like one with a lot of the same visual language and tone that so many of these works end up having. Vaguely pleasant, without a worry in sight. The show is mostly held together by Alina as a character. The world isn't particularly interesting, but the series does a decent enough job of exploring a side of it that we rarely get to see, and Alina's sarcastic, if a little bitter at times, wit works well as a comedic glue for the show, even when it starts venturing further and further from its original premise. The comedy, while absurd, does hit home pretty hard for anyone who has found themselves in a dead-end job, and the pettiness of her motivation is quite charming in its own right, giving this series pretty solid legs to stand on. However, one can't help but feel like part of the reason Alina ends up carrying the weight of the show on its back might just be the quality of everything else. You can certainly have a show that is bolstered and driven by a strong lead character, but that doesn't mean you can ignore the rest. The biggest crime Guild Receptionist runs into is that it's kind of a one-joke pony, and when it inevitably has to branch out of that niche to sustain its narrative, the results can be a lot more mixed. The sidecast is large, but mostly uninteresting, and the longer it goes, the more it seems to just evolve into being a showcase of just how strong Alina is, especially as her secret becomes less and less, well, secret. The animation at the hands of Cloverworks is at least above average for a series like this, but the comedic timing lacks bite in a way that does wear on you with time and as the series degrades. Even Alina's at-time one-note personality can struggle to really hold things up. It really does come down to how much Alina can keep the plot from going in a million directions, and how entertaining I think that's going to be. I think some of these shows could use just a little more random in their own lives. What do you think is the best way to handle the issue of age and media critique? Older anime obviously have the benefit of establishing tropes and genre conventions, but it also means they can feel very generic in hindsight without proper context. Then again, should classics be beholden to quote-unquote context, or should they be enjoyable regardless of how much you've read up on their backstory? To go one step further, what is the value of having an idea first if someone did it better later? Released by Netflix in spring 2024, Rising Impact is yet another golf anime, this time following the story of young Gawain Nanaumi. Gawain lives with his grandfather in a rural mountain town where he enjoys playing baseball with his friends and seeing who can send the ball the furthest. One day, he has a run-in with pro golfer Kiria Nishino, who introduces him to golf and quickly hooks him on the sport. Determined to become the best golfer, Gawain leaves his secluded home and moves to Tokyo to train under Kiria so he can be the very best like nobody ever was. While it's easy to consider Rising Impact just another golf anime made in the wake of all the other similar recent titles, the original manga apparently released all the way back in 1998, predating Birdie Wing by almost 2.5 decades. It also beats out the 2014 release of Oi Tonbo, whose anime ironically enough also debuted in spring of 2024. It's not the oldest golf manga, but it's certainly up there. But all that's irrelevant. How does Rising Impact work as an actual anime? The answer is remarkably similar to Oi Tonbo, right down to a lot of the story beats. Kid from the boonies gets discovered by a professional golfer and goes to train with them to learn how to be number one. It's pretty standard story and structure, and it's got a solid side cast to hold it all together. The animation and score are pretty solid, giving it a slight edge over Tonbo in that department at least. Beyond that, it kinda does struggle to justify the investment though. Gawain is a lot snottier than Tonbo, making for a bit of a hard sell. He's not the worst, but asking for 2 cores with a slightly worse protagonist and marginally better production is a lot. Actually, I think that about sums up Rising Impact. It's not the worst, but across the board feels like it could certainly be better. It's not unwatchable, but I guess we'll see. Adaptations. First released in 2007, The World Ends With You is an action RPG developed for the Nintendo DS, which has acquired quite the cult following over the years. The game follows amnesiac Neku Sakuraba as he gets involved in a series of games hosted by a mysterious group known as the Reapers to determine his fate and whether or not he can return to life after dying under unknown circumstances. The game was heavily praised and released for its gameplay, music, and art direction that just oozes that juicy late 2000s style. The series has maintained a strong following to date, and so it wasn't too surprising when an anime adaptation was announced for a 2021 release. The question that then arises is just how much can I expect from an adaptation of a nearly 15-year-old game in an entirely different medium? The first question is whether or not The World Ends With You, the animation, is a worthy adaptation of the game, and that answer is a resounding not even close. I don't know if it ever was going to be though. Game adaptations are hard enough as is, and with a game whose appeal is so entrenched in its medium, the anime was always going to be fighting an uphill battle. Now, as a point of clarification, I have never actually played the original, but even then I can still feel the game's story being severely crunched down in a way that at times struggles to adapt plot beats that certainly would have made more sense in the format of a video game. In its defense though, outside the lens of its source material, The World Ends With You, the animation isn't terrible. The animation is pretty on point and adapts the iconic style of the games to a fault. A lot of the OST is ripped straight from the game, which isn't all that bad when the original OST was already full of bangers. The designs themselves are pretty fun, and the general plot beats are solid enough that even in a mildly bastardized state, it's certainly not the worst, and if you don't know any better, could make for a decently enjoyable time. Unfortunately, I do know better, and with how limited my time is, I do have to ask if it's better spent just playing the original. It did get a Switch re-release, so that's not too crazy an idea. I feel like the bar is very low for this style of light novel fantasy, so it isn't too surprising that an actually decent lead is about all Guild Receptionists needed to stand out and ride its way to completion mostly off of morbid curiosity. It is, though, unfortunately about what you'd expect. The joke runs dry pretty quickly, and eventually it falls into the same generic plot points of everything else in the genre. Aline isn't quite enough to carry the weight of the plot, leaving something that comes off like grey goo in the vague shape of something better. Watchable? Sure. Particularly good time? Results will vary. Rising Impact is just kind of unfortunate. Its writing is a little rough around the edges, and the production, while serviceable, isn't quite enough to surpass its competitors. I watched a lot of golf anime recently, including Tombow, and thus I'm not really in the mood for that show again, but worse. It's kind of tragic since Rising Impact is just a few tweaks here and there from being decent, but 2 cores is a big ask for a series like this, and I'm not quite feeling like taking that dive. While it's maybe not the flashiest of adaptations, I get the sense that The World Ends With You the animation is at least sufficient to give any unknowing viewer that gist of what the game is about. While I'm certain it's a vastly inferior experience, I was still curious enough to take it to the end. The score and character designs hold the series together, but it's not helped at all by pretty shitty pacing that rushes through the narrative, giving it little time to breathe. The result isn't terrible, but my final recommendation hasn't changed, that you should probably just go play the game instead, and if you already have, there's no real reason to watch this. It is what it is. With that, we reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed and that I could be of help with narrowing down your planning list. If you want to see more videos like this, remember to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought of the series discussed here. I, for one, am just glad that I didn't spend another month talking about Isekai. I'm sure that won't last long. While you're down there, you can check the playlist for more videos in this series, and click the other links to follow me on other sites for more content from me. Until we meet again, remember to always stay salty.